It's lovely to see how many of you showed up. Startup Reykjavik decided to host us this time. Obviously, we did not expect as many people, but we knew a lot of you would show up. It's fantastic to see, like always, how fast the community has grown in the last few years. And you are approved to that statement, I guess. So give your all a good hand. One thing, because this room is like super tiny, we're gonna have 2 talks, then we're gonna have a break, and then we're gonna listen to 2 more talks. So we can go outside this hall in between and have a beer, eat some pizza, and have a good time, because staying in here the whole time is probably gonna make us way too sweaty, I guess. We're used to that though, but still, I mean, yeah, so just make space for each and everyone. Try to come to as close to the stage as you can, so you can see the slides in between. My name is Christian, by the way. I'm a guy from the JSConf community, or yeah, JavaScript community here in Iceland. We are a few of us that are building this like community, and everyone is welcome to join us. So if anyone wants to do something, give a talk, host us like their company or something, definitely reach out to us. Yeah, we are basically here because of JSConf. So I'm just gonna ask you a few questions, so bear with me. Like, how many of you have heard of JSConf? Okay, almost everyone. How many of you are going to JSConf? Okay, maybe 1/4, 1/5 maybe. So the reason for that is, of course, this is our first year that we're hosting this conference. For those of you who have just seen it and noticed that it's sold out, we are so sorry. We had originally thought about selling around 200 tickets. We upped it and we have sold maybe 380 tickets or something. So we're way oversold, but definitely stay tuned for next year. And we can probably do more on like giving the community back some tickets or something next year. So stay tuned for that. If we host it, there is. Nothing has been decided. Maybe it'll just fail catastrophically, I don't know. Anyway, this is the website that you can check out. It has everything that, every information on JSConf that you can access online. And we have a lot of events. Yeah, we have a lot of events during JSConf. And some of the events are free, and you can attend them without a ticket. So I just wanted to tell you about it. If you go to jsconf.is, scroll down a bit, then you can see the community events, for example. This is the one that we are attending right now. Then we have a Beer.js, which is an informal event where we just come together, we buy like a cooter, like 1 keg of beer, and just have a good time chilling and hanging out. Then we also have a workshop on Wednesday, after 2 weeks. It's a workshop that is hosted by Svef, which is the Samtök Veliðnaðarins in Iceland. And finally, we have a free workshop, which is not yet announced, on Monday after the conference. Two guys from Mozilla came in, or decided to come in, and they are going to give a talk about progressive web apps, which is very nice topic to attend. And we expect maybe 35 or 50 people to be able to show up. So definitely stay tuned for the announcement for that, because it's probably going to run out in like, I don't know, 10 seconds or 15 seconds, because we are going to announce it during the JSConf. Yeah, that's it for JSConf, I guess. Yeah, 2 more things. Sorry, I'm not going to go forever, but we basically one of the parties. So on Friday we have an open party in Gamla, which is a huge venue, amazing venue, and it's going to be set in a Viking theme. I know it's very cliche for us Icelanders, but we basically decided to open it up, and every one of you can attend. And if you go to the ticket website that we have, you can purchase a ticket to the event, and it's at around 3,000 kroners, I believe. Yeah, 3,000, and you're gonna get plenty of beer and fun and everything. So I don't know, we have maybe 50 or 100 tickets to that party. So if you want to do something nice on a Friday evening, hang with a lot of people from the Auschwitz community around the world, definitely check that out. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. One more thing, we're looking for volunteers. So if you want to help us out in any way, you can definitely reach out to us. You will be able to join some of the parties, and we will definitely have some goodies for you. So it's also on the ticketing website, but if you want to help, like anything that you want to do, we have a lot of press releases that are yet to be written. We have a lot of like booths to man or something. So definitely reach out to us, and we will, appreciate your help. So, on to the schedule for this event. We have 4 talks, and I'm not going to announce them right now. I'm just going to welcome David Blurton for the first talk of the day, and he's going to take the stage. Give him a great hand.
Thanks, Christian. Okay, I've got a lot to say, as usual, so let's get straight into it. Start the timer to avoid the inevitable 3-hour. No, I'm kidding. Okay, let's go. This talk is about using, so last time I was here, I gave a talk on building an API for Icelandic. And I demoed a little side project I was working on, and I showed how I was using Docker in production to run this app once it was ready to be deployed. And I want to explain now why I'm using Docker in development as well, and what kind of workflow. I guess I should start by saying who here knows what Docker is? Who's used Docker before? Okay. Well, the rest of you are in for a wild ride. I don't have time to explain everything, but basically suffice to say that Docker is a way to take your application, wrap it up with everything it needs to run, so dependencies, any binaries it needs on the path, the environment that it needs, wrap that all up in a file system, and then you can basically run that in a self-contained way, so that it's isolated from the hardware that it's running on. So why would you do this for development? Has anyone ever had this problem? Someone comes to them, you come to them with a problem, and they're like, well, it works on my machine. I think this is like one of the most frustrating problems. If someone gives you this response, because it means, I'm not going to help you fix this. It works for me. I don't know why it's not working for you. It's probably something you've done wrong. Like maybe you have something crazy on your laptop. I don't know. But basically, there's some difference between our environments and, okay, how are we going to find out what this is? So this is a pretty frustrating problem if you've had this. And the way that Docker solves this problem is it forces you to document the environment you need. And I'll show you how we do this, but basically we're going to describe all the dependencies, everything we need to run our application. And basically by me running the application inside this container, and you running the application inside the container, if it works for me, it works for you. So we can at least eliminate this problem, like of it works on my machine, down to, well, have you got Docker installed? Okay, perhaps a new person joins the team, and you've got some project you want to get up and running. They're like, okay, check out the source code. All right, what next? And like, yeah, did you install Postgres? Do we need Postgres? What version was it? I don't know. What version of Node did we use when we started this? If you're lucky, someone's written all these things down. But if you're unlucky, then you've got a long and difficult process to go through of figuring out, how do I get this application to run? It's not enough to just have the source code. You know, how do I make it go? And even on an interpreted language like JavaScript, there's still like a lot of requirements. You know, we've got to install dependencies. Okay, what version of npm do I need? You know, so basically Docker allows you to be specific enough that if it works today, it will work tomorrow. Like, this is protecting us against when we start up an old project. Like, who has ever opened a project from a year ago and it's worked first time? Like, I don't know about you, this does not happen to me. And maybe this is a symptom of, maybe this is just me. Does no one else have this problem? Yeah, okay, a few people. But I mean, this is just a symptom of being in a really fast-paced environment, and that's probably what attracts a lot of people to web development. But it means that things are going to change fast, which means that we have a very high chance of this problem. Like, it worked last time. What's changed? Another problem that we often have is that you build up over time on your personal or your work computer this perfect environment that grows around your app. This is the database and some specific version and some hack that you had to do to get this thing to work. And basically it works on your machine, but it only works on your machine. And how do you then take this working app in development and make it work in production? Again, Docker is the answer to this. We're going to wrap up the application, everything it needs, so that it can work exactly the same in development as in production. So hopefully you're all convinced now about Docker. So how do we do it? Who here has tried to use Docker on a Mac before? Okay. Basically, if you've tried this, you've probably had a really bad time because it was like really sucky. The first version they did ran inside VirtualBox and it had a lot of issues. Don't need to go into all the issues, but basically they've taken a new approach, and now rather than running Docker inside VirtualBox, they're using hypervisor to run it kind of with a hardware abstraction layer instead. So basically, the problems that it's fixed, if you've used the old one, just to run through them, you don't need the Docker Quick Start terminal anymore. Just Docker is available system-wide. You can connect your containers on localhost, and the file system mounts work correctly. I can see that most people have not tried this, so I have no idea why none of this would work. Why don't these things just work? I don't know. Well, they didn't work, but now they do. So this is basically a new thing, Docker for Mac, and there is also Docker for Windows, which is supposed to work in the same way. Again, using hypervisor, not in a virtual machine. But basically what this means is that there's a lot less friction to using Docker on a Mac or Windows now versus using it in the native environment, which is Linux. Okay, so we've got application. We're convinced that we want to protect ourselves from changes in environment, but also changes over time. How are we going to do this? We need three things. The first thing we're going to do, write a Docker file. So, to give an example, I'm just going to go through really quickly, like, why have I written this Docker file this way? If you've never seen a Docker file, hopefully you'll follow along. If you've written Docker files before, I'm going to explain why I do these things and why you should do these things. So this is a Docker file for Node. So we're going to start with from Node and then a version. So it's a good idea to pick a version. So I picked version 6 rather than just pointing at latest. Basically, if you don't put a version, you get the latest version. But then that doesn't protect us from changes over time. Like if we'd have written this Docker file a year ago, the latest version would have been 12, and now it's 6. So good to specify a version. And basically this Node image is an image that's been built by someone who is a core maintainer on Node, and they've said, this is how you configure Node correctly in a Docker environment. So this is good. So we're able to use their expertise there and start from a correctly configured version of Node. So we're going to set some environment variables. So basically, this is where we're going to put our code. And this is npm's default log level is HTTP. It will log every HTTP request it makes, which is completely useless. OK. You'll notice here, if you've been reading ahead, that we have two copy instructions. So copy is how we get files from outside Docker into Docker. So we're going to copy the package.json and the npm shrinkwrap file first. The reason we do this is because Docker works by, it builds basically a layer for every instruction in this file, and these layers can be cached. So basically, by copying the package.json in first, that means that as long as our dependencies don't change, the dependencies can be cached. So then we run npm install, and afterwards we copy in the rest of the code. So basically, this is just a nice optimization to speed up the build time. Expose is a port. Our application is going to run on port 8000. And then what command do we use to start the app? So we've already got some really nice documentation here, like what port does the application run on? How do I start the application? What version of Node does it depend on? And yeah, unfortunately, the package.json doesn't have to contain what version of Node you're depending on. Although you can add it as like an optional thing. All right, so we've got a Docker file, and we could build this Docker file now, and it would basically do the steps that we've gone through, start from Node, copy our application in, run npm install, and we'd be able to run this locally, use it locally, but also push the image and run it in production if we wanted, and that would, in theory, all work great. However, the problem is it's not so great for development because we have to build the image every time we want to make a change to our application. So the feedback cycle is really slow. How do we fix this? Okay, we're going to write a Docker Compose file. Docker Compose is a way to, as it sounds, compose different Docker images together and describe the dependencies between them so that you can have a file that describes your whole stack. So you have maybe a database, some APIs, some front-end stuff. What does that look like? So here's a really simple Docker Compose file for my API, which is a Node Express API. So we've got a list of services, and we're going to define one called API. We're going to build everything from the current working directory. So that means it's basically going to watch the current working directory for changes. We're going to override the command. So in production, we want to run just start the app. But in development, we want to use something like Node Monitor to restart the app when the files change. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with this kind of development style using Node Monitor. We're going to define some ports. Again, 8000 is the port that our application is running on, and this just means we're going to map it to port 8000 on the host. Okay, hold on to your seats. This is where it gets really good. So to solve the problem, if we want to see our changes outside the container reflected immediately inside the container, we're going to define a mapping, like if you like a file mount. So we're going to mount some files from outside the container into the container. And the first thing we want to do is basically just take where we were copying our application into the code directory for. Now we want to mount a volume of the current directory into the code directory inside the Docker container. So basically, it just means that it's like mounting a remote disk or something. Basically, the files that you have when you're developing normally in your editor or whatever, those files are the ones that are being seen by the container. So the application is running inside the container, but the files themselves are outside the container. This causes one problem, which is that if you have binary dependencies, the binaries outside will be compiled for OS X, and inside they need to be compiled for Linux. So what we're going to do is basically stub out the node modules directory. So we're going to give it a second volume to mount on top of the first one so that it can replace the contents of node modules with the node modules that it needs. And that's going to happen when we run the npm install step. Everybody completely baffled? Okay, this is the worst of it. We're done. Okay. And basically we can, because these containers are super lightweight, we can define as many of them as we want. So one thing that I find really nice to do is to also define something that's going to run my tests. So exactly the same, apart from I just change the command. I'm just going to say, okay, run npm run test and run it with the watch flag, so that when I'm when I'm developing, I can see whether I'm breaking my tests. So this is everything we need to run our Node Express app in development using Docker. So at great risk, shall we give it a try? So basically what it's going to do is going to read the compose file, and then it's going to create 2 new services. So you have the API being created here. You can see it's run NodeMon, like I promised. Then we have also one being created for the test guy, and that's going to start Ava, which is the test runner. You can see, maybe you can't see down here, it says down here 316 passed, so the tests have run. And then say we decide that we don't need this line anymore. So it's going to rerun the test. One of the tests is going to fail. So this shows that these files are being watched and they're being rebuilt inside the container. Okay, great. Okay, so this is great. This is great for a simple app. But I'm sure that none of you have any problems running your Node Express apps. Like, this generally works. Like, generally things don't break when you upgrade nodes. So, like, why would I bother to do this? I mean, aside from the benefits of the documentation, like, you know, hard to get excited about this. So, okay. Why should we do this? Okay, one super nice feature of Docker is that it has a massive library of pre-built images. So again, how I mentioned that Node they've built an image that's Node configured by someone who works at Node, who supposedly knows what they're doing. We also have images for Postgres, for Redis, for Memcache, whatever you're using. And it's simple to use. You can just, instead of specifying that the code local, you can specify that the code comes from an image. So here we have a database defined, and the image is just Postgres latest. So, and that's all it takes to, it will just download Postgres, like start it all up, configure everything. You can configure it via these environment variables. And then what we'll do here, which is really cool, is we'll define a link between the API and the database. And what this is going to do is it's going to create an entry in the host file for the API, which will tell it how to find the database. So this database is not accessible over the internet. So you're running this on a server. It's only accessible to the API service. This is just an internal only network routing. So that's really nice. And if you wanted to, say you're using a SQL ORM and you're like, oh, what would happen if I use MySQL instead? Just change this guy to MySQL, give it a try. If it doesn't work out, you know, you can just throw a container in the bin, and it's just really quick to try out new things. Like, I wonder what it'd be like if I added a third service, just create a new service definition, run Docker Compose up, it will pull everything down, start it all up together. So really nice. However, everything's still running on localhost. Like, this is not how we run things when we deploy them. Everything has a nice name, we have a nice domain name that we can refer to. So how can we get that kind of thing in local development? And I wondered this. Basically my problem was I couldn't remember what port anything was on, and then everything would be on the same port, like everything would use 8080, and I was like, how can I fix this problem? It's pretty simple. This is not JavaScript specific, but it is Mac specific. How do we configure a .dev domain? How can I make it so that anything myproject.dev will go to localhost? Super simple. Just install DNS mask using Brew, or I don't know, the download button, whatever they have. Need 2 files. This is a DNS mask config file, and I think these slashes, like, I don't know why they use slashes, but basically just send dev to localhost 127.0.0.1 is the loopback. It always points to localhost. And then the final step is to tell the operating system, when someone requests something at a .dev domain, make sure that it resolves using our custom DNS resolver, our DNS mask. And the way that you do this is super simple as well. just create a file, etc resolver dev, and then name server 127001. Okay. So let's have a look at an example of that real quick. So how am I gonna define all these services to have a name? Basically, I'm gonna do kind of similar to what you do in production. You're gonna have some container which acts as a kind of load balancer or forwarder, and he's going to for every incoming request, he's going to look, do I have a container that matches this name? So I've defined one here, tala.dev. There's going to be some proxy, and he's going to forward all the requests to the right ports. So each container can just define a virtual host. So we've got one here, tala.dev, which is my front end. And then this is the API I was just showing you. I'm going to define virtual host api.tala.dev. And then I just add another entry here for my proxy. I'm just going to use a pre-built image. Again, like this isn't anything I've had. We're just going to pull down this image of high availability proxy. He's going to listen to all the containers that are running on my local machine. I'm telling him which services I want to forward to here. So forward to API and web. And then he's going to listen on port 80 for HTTP. 443 for HTTP here is like a dashboard that shows you which services he's forwarding to. So one problem I had when I was doing this is that if you're building a front-end app, say a React app, Ember.js app, an Angular app, the environment you want to develop in is not the same as how you want to deploy that app. When you deploy it, you're going to compile everything to static files. You're just going to serve these files using some basic file serving thing, your Nginx or whatever. But in development, that's no good. You want to have library load. You want to have cache rebuilding, all these sorts of nice things. And the way that I've done that for this project is just created a different Docker file for development and for production. So this Docker file here is basically the exact same as the one I showed you before, because we're running Webpack, which is a build your files using Node. And then when we go to deploy, then I just have a different Docker file, this Docker file, again using an official one. So just Nginx configured by someone who works at Nginx and says, this is how you do Nginx. And then we're just going to copy our files in, start the Nginx server. Super simple. So what does this look like? Yeah, one other super nice feature about this is that if you have, say, separate people working on the front end and the back end, and you don't want to have to run the API yourself to be able to develop the front end, you can just use a pre-built image. So this is an image that I built before, exactly as described, and I can say, okay, my API, just pull down the latest version of the API from the repository. So that means I don't even have to have the source code checked out for the API, but I can run it locally. I can run it if it has, a local database. I can just define a database section there as well. Super nice. All right. So, I mean, one of my favorite features is just that you're able to start multiple services without having to open lots and lots of tabs in your terminal. Like I used to just like, okay, start up this guy, make a new tab. Okay, start up this guy. And it also allows you to use the same command for every project. So I'm just using docker compose up, which just takes the compose file that starts it, and you can use that for every project, and it will just use the existing config. So here's my front end running. This code's running inside Docker. it's pointing to an API, which is also running inside Docker, which is being pulled down from the registry. This is what it does. It helps you decline Icelandic words if you've seen this project before. And to demonstrate that we have live reload. So this guy's blue. Just change him to red. And we'll see that Webpack has picked up the file changes. He's rebuilt, and we have live reload working. And just to reiterate, you don't need to have Node installed on your laptop at all. You don't need to have npm. You don't need to have any database or anything. This is all running just inside Docker. So I think this is a really nice way to develop, for me at least. The only change that I had to make to my Webpack config, if you're using that and you want to give this a go, is that Webpack dev server normally has a hard-coded link to localhost. So just change that to whatever name you're using. And the dev server doesn't bind to all interfaces by default, so you need to add that. So this says bind to all interfaces, so that make sure that Docker can pick it up. So these were just the two pitfalls that I had when I tried to get it working with Webpack. But now you know, so you won't have any problems. It's been really productive for me to work this way. I hope that you're encouraged to give it a try. There's nothing specific about this technique to JavaScript, but Christian said I had to talk about JavaScript since a JavaScript meetup. But if you're running your API using Python or Ruby, just put from Python, from Ruby, whichever version you need, and start from there. It's really nice. Also a really nice technique if you have a stack that uses multiple technologies. Just as easy to have, Ruby working for the back end and then using Node for the front end gives you lots of flexibility to change. So I hope this was completely baffling. That was my intention. You can have a look at these slides, slides.com/David follow along at home, give it a try. It's super easy to get up and running, and hopefully will give you a lot of benefits in the future. And then if you just want to look at the source code for this application, see how it all works, it's github.com/Tala-Íslensku. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions, maybe? Maybe 2 or 3 questions while David is here. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not exactly related to JavaScript, but I saw your website like a year ago or something. I was wondering if you'd gotten any further with it, and you would have to showing that, because I was really interested. Because you had some, like you could search some pretty obscure words that would belong to multiple scenarios depending on the definition.
Yeah.
And
so the question is, can I use this website? The answer is no. I have a long-standing dispute with the Institute of Icelandic Studies, and basically they would prefer it if they were the only ones with a website that shows you Icelandic words, and I think this is ridiculous. So basically, no, unfortunately, you can't use this product at the moment. I'm hoping that will change. It's just a case of when. But yeah, if you agree that it would be good if developers like yourselves could make use of this Icelandic data in a way that suits however you want to do, then please send an email to your favorite member of Institute of Icelandic Studies. Let's pick any one. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
How much time did you spend learning Docker and getting this to work with Docker?
Yeah, the question is how long did I spend learning about Docker, getting this to work with Docker? I think it is pretty tough to get going with it first. Like, there's a lot of, if you haven't done this before, this presentation was probably like, what the hell? A lot of new stuff. But a lot of it is unlearning things that you've had to do in the past to make these things work. And like what I've showed you today is genuinely all the steps with nothing missing, other than installing Docker on your laptop. So basically, I want to say that in the past it's been really tricky. But now is a much better time to have a go for the first time because they fix all sorts of issues and lots of things just work much better out the box. So yeah, it's still a new technology, but hey, we love that, right? Everything's broken all the time. It's wicked.
Keep the other hand. I'm sorry for the heat in here. Like, it's getting super hot. We have some drinks in the back. If they are out on the table, there's a fridge next to the table on the other side. So just grab everything in there and bring it to the table. It's all ours. So just get some refreshments while we sit the talks out. We're gonna listen to one more talk, and then we're gonna have some meal break, and we're gonna have some pizza. Yeah, I'll give you like 5 minutes to grab a drink while the speaker sets up. Thanks.
Ja. Ja, gärna. Ja.
Internet och framme.
Jag vet inte internet.
Det skulle vara fixat till sig själv internet.
Greta.
Full window here.
Yeah, I'm also sitting beside the window and it's suffocating.
I had to change the display settings to the resolution.
Ja.
If you need to adjust the volume for any reason, it's this first one.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna show that and talk about the stress.
Yeah, sorry. I think it was probably a bit much.
Ja.
Hello, hello. We're gonna start again. So yeah, on to the schedule again. One thing I forgot to mention in my intro is that Dohop is helping us out with this event. They gave us some money to buy beer and pizza, so give them a great hand. And for those of you who don't know, Dohop is an Icelandic meta flight search engine where you can find and book flights, hotels, and cars. Super useful. I've used it myself. TM. React client with a brand along with a React Native app, which helped them land the Nýsköpunarverðlaun Íslands award. So great for them, and thanks for helping us out. Next up is Berglind. She's gonna be a bit less technical than David was, so give her a great hand.
Hi, I'm trying to see if I can hide this. Googling out now. Hi, right. Yeah, hi, my name is Berglind. I'm working at Kolibri as a web developer, but I have been working as an Android developer for quite a few years. So I'm not here to talk about my month experience of JavaScript, but I'm going to talk about something, yeah, a bit different. I'm going to talk about feelings and emotions and thoughts. So I hope I'll connect with you people on that. So my talk is it's about a thing called the imposter syndrome, or the feeling like a fake. I am actually going to make a connection to JavaScript in the end, just so wait for it. So what is the imposter syndrome? It's a psychological term which was brought up in the 70s, and it refers to when people feel that they are like a fake or a fraud in what they do, and they're like constantly worried about other people, you know, finding them out, realizing that they're not as competent or as skilled as everybody else thinks. And this is like in spite of external signs of success. And those signs are then just, you know, dismissed as being, you know, luck or a matter of timing or, you know, something else than yourself. And this is by no means only for, you know, known in the programming world, but it is known there, and it's quite common for yeah, programmers and creative people. This is a comic I found by Loa. I don't know if you see it, but it's basically just, you know, describing how you always think that everybody else knows what they're doing, when in fact nobody knows what they're doing most of the time. Yeah, so can I maybe ask, you know, can you raise your hand if you relate to have felt this at some point? That's nice, yes, thanks for sharing that. And that's actually quite normal. One study showed that 70% of all people like feel like an imposter at one point in their life, and another one shows that, you know, 2 out of 5 successful people feel like they're frauds at their work. And if you have suffered from this, you may be glad to know it's really common among, you know, successful and intelligent people. And you are in a group with like celebrities like Tina Fey, Neil Gaiman, Emma Watson, and Bill Murray. So that's not a bad group to be a part of. I just want to tell you briefly about like my story with this, because like I suffered severely from this for many years. It might have, started with, just insecurities for me as being a female in computer science and as a programmer. Because like I'm not the stereotypical programmer, I am female, and I did not spend my teenage years programming or disassembling computers or playing Quake at Skelti or something like that. And actually, before I started computer science, my only knowledge of programming was just a little bit HTML, and yes, I had taken one course in SQL in college by accident. But like I thought it was really interesting, and in the end, like I felt programming was really fun. That's why I continued. Otherwise, I would never have done it. And I remember at my first event at NERD, the student society in the University of Iceland, this guy came up to me and asked me, "What computer games do you play?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I don't play any computer games. Can I never be a programmer?" But then, like, I realized later on that not all programmers do play computer games, and definitely not all of those that play computer games are fit to be programmers. So there you have that. I started to learn Android programming in 2009. It was the first time it was taught in the university, or just here in Iceland. And after I graduated, I started to focus on Android programming. I did an Android app for Yoko and Smáralind. And then in a couple of years, I was approached by Plain Vanilla, and I asked to join them to start their Android version of QuizUp. And at that time, I was like one of the most experienced Android programmers in Iceland. This was in 2012. And I mean, it might sound cool, but I felt it was terrifying because I did not feel I was experienced at all. But I took the offer and do not regret that, because it was a really fun adventure at Plain Vanilla. And as you might know, QuizUp turned out to be a huge success worldwide. And like I kind of thought that like this feeling would wear off, and the imposter syndrome, it's also like really common with students learning, that makes sense. But after being for QuizUp for a couple of years, and after being a big part in developing it and making the decisions, and I had a lot of passion for it, worked a lot, and like I still had this feeling that I really didn't know what I was doing, and kind of was afraid that at some point people around me would just find out, which was And every time when I was like asked to take on new responsibilities and stuff like that I wanted to, I said yes, but back in my mind there was always like, but oh my God, but I don't know how to do this, But then a while ago, I just stumbled upon this concept. It was actually through some programming community sites, and just seeing that this is a thing, the imposter syndrome, and it's not just a personality trait of mine or my insecurity, but it's actually a thing, and there are other people that suffered from it. Just that helped me a lot. Just feeling that I was not alone. But there are some other measures that I wanted to share with you, which I think can help people that suffer from it. And like, I definitely feel like I don't suffer as much from it, but it pops up every once in a while. But like, when it does for me now, I kind of can, like step away from it and, have some reality check that, you don't have to be the best in everything or know what you're doing always. Nobody does, so. How to overcome it. First of all, recognize your success. Just if you would write down, the path, what you did to get to the place you are today. When did you say yes when you could have said no? That takes a lot of courage. Write down your projects you've worked on and problems you've solved, new stuff you've learned, and you will find out that you have a big part in your own success. and recognize your strengths and weaknesses. I mean, we all have our different strengths and weaknesses, and we kind of tend to, or at least me, compare myself to the exceptional ones or people that maybe just have different qualities than I have, but it doesn't really help you, to feel bad about that. So, just find out what your strengths are, and if you can try to improve them, and also like your weaknesses, and if you can, work on them. Like for me, I'm a single mother, and it took me a really long time to accept that, maybe I don't have as much time as people that don't have children to, spend on programming. And so, I'll probably not gain as much deep knowledge or skills as the person that can spend all their time doing it. And I mean, that's fine. And I have, different sets of strengths. And then like weaknesses, for me, I think my biggest weakness is not asking for help quick enough, and just get frustrated and all that, and I've been working on that. So yeah, this is really powerful. And then also, like, as I said, like, people are different. Some people are introverts, others not, and neither is better than the other. Everything is okay. Just be yourself and improve on what you can. Pair programming. First, when I was asked to do that, I was terrified. When feeling like a fraud, it's hard to, fake it while another person is watching you. But after I tried it, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I think it's really good to also just watch another person program and see how they solve problems and and how they think, and you'll definitely see that they don't know what they're doing all of the time as well. So that's a really good exercise. And I don't mean like you have to pair program all of the time. I definitely think like there is a time and a place for it, but definitely try it. Say what you're thinking. I mean, it can be hard sometimes, but just try to be honest. And even if you don't know something, or you have some questions, I mean, it's okay to be wrong. Nobody is right all the time. I mean, presidents are wrong all the time. It's okay for you to be. No question is a stupid question, they say, and I agree. And even if it is a stupid question, it's still better to ask it than not to ask it. I mean, you'll never learn anything if you don't ask. Feedback. It's very nice to get just, casual feedback on a daily basis, but I also feel, for me, it has been very beneficial to get feedback from a person I worked with in a formal setting. And we did this a couple of times at Play Vanilla, and they have been doing it as well as Colibri. And it doesn't have to be much, just, as I say, meet with somebody that you have worked with, and you both have prepared talking about maybe your strengths and weaknesses. And and you'll most definitely like hear that you have some qualities that you don't see but other people see, and so at least worked very well for me. And I would encourage you, if your workplace does not have this, to try to get it going, even if it's just like on a yearly basis or a 6-month basis or whatever. All right, the JavaScript connection. No. As I said, like I recently changed jobs, and and it took a lot of guts, I feel, to go from a senior Android position to a junior web programming position, because like that's what I am in JavaScript. And I'm not so sure I would have dared to do it if I still like had suffered severely from the imposter syndrome, because like I knew this meant that I just had to be totally honest about my skills and not be afraid to ask questions and all that. And I'm very glad I could do that. So I just really hope that this like relates to anybody here, and I would like really want to hear your thoughts about this now or afterwards, or like if you apply any of these advices, you know, how it goes out for you. My Twitter handle is here, and I also just have berglind@colibri.is. So yeah, just thank you for listening. Yes. Are there any thoughts or questions? I understand if you suffer from the imposter syndrome, you might not dare to ask. But yeah.
Did you look for help to get through this, or did you just manage to come on your own and just overcome it?
The question was, did I manage to myself get over this, or did I get some help? Well, in a way, I got help. You know, I went to a psychologist for a while, and I guess he helped me as well. It's building up my competence and stuff like that. And just then, always just talking about it and, you know, realizing like this pinned down like what the problem was, I guess. And yeah, step away from it, you know, just seeing that the problem is not you, it's, you know, your mind playing tricks on you. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Something more? Yeah.
Do you know anyone who didn't feel like an imposter? Because all the way through the talk, I'm sitting there going like, yeah.
So the question is, do I know anybody who has not felt like an imposter? Most people I've talked about relate to this. I think like it's different, you know, how severe it is. I mean, I think most people, you know, experience it at one point, but maybe like, you know, for a shorter time or something like that. And when I was reading up on this, it actually has also the andstæða, you know, the opposite, which I don't remember what it's called. So there's also, the Dunning-Kruger effect. So that's like people that think like they, I guess, know it all and stuff like that, but when they really don't. So I mean, those people don't suffer from this.
If it's any consolation to anyone who feels like an imposter, the more you know, the less you think you know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The more you know, the less you think you know, definitely. Thanks for that input.
So yeah, I just want to thank you, Berglind, for coming up to the States and talking about this. This is obviously really personal, so we deeply appreciate your thoughts on this. Like we have been discussing, like everyone relates to this. I relate hugely to this as well, since I like taught it myself, and I always think that someone else is better at what they do because they did X, Y, Z. So thank you. Give her a good hand again. So the pizza is on the way, so it should be here within the next 5 minutes. We have a lot of drinks, I hope, left. We bought plenty at least, so definitely stand up, mingle with people you have never talked to. I mean, it's always nice to talk to the people you know, but try to engage with people that you don't know, because we're all great minds and everyone has something to share and widen the community. So cheers, enjoy the pizza and beers. And yeah, one more thing, the pizza will be in the hall, like on the other side of the wall, so there's plenty of space there, we can mingle there. So yeah, cheers.
Oh, I guess that's hard. It's really funny, like with this update, you have these, and it's such a funny thing, like, whenever someone actually brings up, they feel like they're like, everyone in the room is there. Yeah, then I enjoy it all. And that's where that other like, that's why you have people walking around going, oh, I know. And you actually know what that is. Yeah, that's the way I figured out.